Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this. First, we'll start with an emergency meeting of the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. We'll start with a roll call, please.
Mr. Hart? Here. Ms. Hartman?
Here.
Mr. Adam?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here.
Chair Lavanino?
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We've had a very interesting couple of days, and I know a lot of our staff is working on basically no sleep. One of those individuals is CEO Miyasato, so I will kick it to you, and hopefully we'll have a coherent CEO's report.
Thank you, Chair Lavanino and board members. As part of our emergency meeting, we're here to actually ratify a proclamation of emergency that I issued last night. So that is your first action for the emergency meeting. But also before that, today we've asked Fire Chief Mark Hartwig and Sheriff Bill Brown to say a few words about the cave fire, which, as you know, is burning. Also, Kelly Hubbard, our Director of the Office of Emergency Management, is here as well for any questions. So, Chief Hartwig.
Thank you, Ms.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. We have to read it into the record first, Chief. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lavanino and members of the board. As CEO Miyasato mentioned, we are convening today for an emergency meeting. Departmental item number 1 comes from the County Executive Office. It is a hearing to consider recommendations regarding cave fire ratification of proclamation of local emergency. And this information is available online as well as in the back of the room of both of our hearing rooms here in South County, Santa Barbara, and Santa Maria.
And then we'll also hear from Mr. Gazzoni.
Chair and supervisors, and probably for the public's benefit, there are 2 meetings today. The first is an emergency meeting. The second is the special meeting that was already agendized, and an arcane part of the Brown Act says that one cannot add something to a special meeting after the notice goes out, and that's why we have also, about midnight last night, noticed this emergency meeting for the purpose of ratifying the emergency proclamation.
Okay. Okay, Chief.
Good morning. Good morning,
Morning.
Members of the board, Ms. Miyasato. Thank you, first of all, for declaring the emergency. We filed for an FMAG, which is an assistance grant, as we start trying to deal with, in the aftermath of this, who's going to pay for what. And we don't even know what that's going to be yet, but we have a lot of resources still coming into the showgrounds at Earl Warren. We give a lot throughout the year through mutual aid, and you hope that you do that in hopes that when you need it, it comes, and it came in droves last evening. We were mostly in the Painted Cave community overnight. I was able to spend some time with the crews that really, probably no better way to say it than they just dug in. They put themselves between the fire and the homes that they were protecting, and unfortunately even some of the people that hadn't left that were supposed to leave under mandatory evacuation. It's 4,100 acres at this point, and we haven't lost a single home. We're doing a lot of reconnaissance right now, and we've lost some outbuildings, but no homes. And I think that's due in large part not just due to the courage of the men and women of not just our department, but the other departments that have helped, but the preparation that they take so very seriously in the Painted Cave community. A lot of people left. There are a lot of other people that are still there, and of course I think that just raised the stakes as we look at what's at stake when we protect these communities and these homes. It's people as well. Just wanted to talk about our cooperators just a little bit. As you know, it's a burning in the forest. Within the forest, the people and property within the forest are fire district responsibilities. On top of that, we have a fire that's extended into the state responsibility area, which is just below the forest and above the city boundaries. And under contract with the state, we are assigned to protect that as well. Now, as soon as it is established, CDF or CAL FIRE spends and sends many resources, and there's as many there right now. And so then, of course, we started using the mutual aid system, and that's where we have so much help. We have it everywhere from LA City. I saw the Skid Row engine out there, and Skid Row is known for being one of the busiest engines in the country, running their own calls, and yet they're up here standing between the fire and the community in Painted Cave and San Marcos Pass. So thank you to the cooperators. Thank you, Board, for the support that you give, not just our own men and women, and not just the fire department, but our OEM. They stood up and really supported the incident to an extent that we couldn't have asked for anything more. And so thank you for that, Ms. Miyasato. I know you were there as well. Kelly and her staff. And then maybe as I kick it over to the sheriff, we are public safety partners, and we can't do it alone, either one of us. And so it's not long into any incident that we aren't on the phone with each other asking exactly what we need and how we can help each other. And so I want to thank Sheriff Brown. I think he's going to talk specifically about some of the numbers that have been evacuated. Thank you and your deputies for the support and assistance, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Supervisor Hartman.
Chief Hartwig, I was just curious about the air support. I was driving up the 101 last night, and it was gustier than I ever remember, and I can't imagine how the air, how that works. So I was just curious if you could elaborate.
Yeah, so we ordered 5 night dropping helicopters last night. We ended up getting 4. 2 of them were ours. It's tough conditions, and it's really up to the people that we asked. We did have an LA County helicopter that came in yesterday, and we had a Kern County helicopter that came in, and they use night vision. They drop at night, and they communicate with ground resources, and they literally pinpoint these drops based on where it's burning hottest and where the biggest risk is. And really, to this point, even until this morning, as I speak to you, it's really been life safety. We haven't spent a lot of time working on perimeter control. It's basically keeping the fire away from people in homes at this point.
Supervisor Hart.
Chief, thank you again for all your work and all the first responders that are out there looking out for us. You mentioned that a lot of the preparations that the mountain communities had done in advance of this event were really helpful in your first response. Can you talk some more about how effective that was and how important that is?
Yeah, I somehow the streets even got more narrow between the first time I drove through them a few months ago and last evening at night. That is really, really tight. In most cases, you can't even pass, as you know, 2 cars on Painted Cave Road. You have to find a turnout. And so if you don't have clearance, you don't have a defensible space. And when we assign resources into an area, you leave it up to that assigned resource to accept the mission or not. And the only thing that they use, primarily the thing that they use, I should say, on whether or not it's a defensible area is whether or not that homeowner, that community has engaged in defensible space. And the Painted Cave community, again, as much as any community that I've seen in my career, takes that seriously. Still a lot of very, very dry and receptive fuels for this fire, and we saw that last night, and we're seeing it even this morning. But with that said, the fuels will burn, but they're trimmed up nicely, and people, resources that are assigned there, even outside the area, find it an area that they can defend structures in, which I think is really a tribute to the community. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Williams.
Chief, could you touch on 2 things? One is just the whether people who should have evacuated and didn't can still evacuate, and the importance, how that could interplay with their own safety. And I also want you to touch on how that can interact with the safety of firefighters and deputy sheriffs out there. And then maybe just because reporting sometimes gets focused on percent containment, and that might not really reveal the state of the fire and what you have out there. How is your strategy affected by the change in weather that we're experiencing?
That's probably not the best report to give you. The experiences that I have, and I was talking to the Santa Barbara City Chief this morning, both sharing experiences about when wind shifted in a well-established fire. So right now, as you know, it's burning down slope. It's fighting down slope because it's working with the slope, and it's working with a very receptive dry fuel bed. Once that changes and you get an onshore flow or more of an onshore flow, it pushes that fire that's well established up into those homes. And my experience in the old fire, we lost almost 100 homes in the Hook Creek community just on the wind shift. I know there was a firefighter in Marin County that was lost. His life was lost in the same way. So we gave that briefing this morning and said, if you think you've got it figured out, you probably have it figured out for 5 minutes. And the wind will change, especially in the canyons that we have here in the front country, and you need to be ready for it. So I think that's important. And the other thing that was the first thing.
Evacuation, and I think that's a good lead-in to evacuation.
We can't, it's a mandatory evacuation. I was talking with a Forest Service chief this morning who was up driving last evening, and he was looking and preparing himself for really the onslaught that was coming, and he looked over and there was a couple that was standing right next to him, and he didn't see him, and he said, "What are you doing here? The fire's there and it's below us. You can't be here." And they said, "Oh, okay, well, then we'll leave." So, we talk about ready, set, go, which is get ready and then just wait around until somebody tells you to go and then go. I like to minimize the effort on the set part because somebody might not come and tell you to go. But if you see fire, you smell smoke, and you think you ought to go, you just ought to go. It's really more of a ready go at that point. So it's tough, right? And access and egress and all those things that make it more difficult as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you,
And
sir.
make sure you pass along all of our well wishes to all of our firefighters out there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Sheriff Brown?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief. To give you a little bit of an update and try to not be too repetitive here. This fire began early Monday evening, started by unknown causes at East Camino Cielo, east of Painted Cave. We received the first 911 calls in the dispatch center at 4:14 p.m. We received a total of 268 911 calls. 21 of those were within the first minute. And so once again, the dispatchers did a tremendous job in dealing with a difficult situation. Our first sheriff's deputy arrived at 16:23, 9 minutes after the call was called in. So far, the fire's burned about 4,100 acres, as the chief indicated. We've had no reported injuries or deaths, and as of the time I got the information, we had one single outbuilding that had been lost, described as a pump house. As of this morning, air support is still dropping water on the fire. Fixed-wing aircraft have arrived, and we're still at 0% containment on the fire. So there's still the potential for a wind event today and a lot of concern, so we're keeping the evacuation area evacuated. And we'll have round-the-clock saturation patrols that are guarding that area for the people that are evacuated. The evacuations began shortly after fire and sheriff units arrived on the scene last night. There were several expansions of the initial evacuation area to the point where we now have a current evacuation order zone that exists Camino Cielo to the north, On Terre to the east, Cathedral Oaks to the south, and Fairview to the west. That's the box essentially that has been drawn and evacuated. We contacted sheriff's deputies and search and rescue personnel last night, contacted about 2,284 residences. Significant number of those, 1,357, were not at home or there was no answer at the house. 517 were contacted who evacuated. 324 did not evacuate and stayed. we were unable to reach 37, and there were 49 vacant homes. The estimated population that was evacuated last night was 5,481 people total. Mutual aid from the law enforcement side was requested when we realized this was going to be a large and extended event. We requested through the Governor's Office of Emergency Services Mutual Aid. We received in-county mutual aid from Santa Barbara PD, from Santa Maria PD, from Guadalupe PD, from the University Police Department, and from outside the county. We've received assistance from the Ventura Sheriff's Office, the Ventura Police Department, and the Oxnard Police Department, and have our on-scene Governor's OES coordinator with us as well. As far as the air support, we had, as indicated, 2 of our helicopters, 308 and Copter 3, supported by a Firehawk helicopter from the Los Angeles County Fire Department, and a Kern County helicopter, and a Forest Service air attack aircraft. All of those aircraft were flying last night, and we had, I don't have the total number, but multiple drops. They did a rotation so they could get some rest while others were flying, and they literally have been flying all night. Fixed-wing aircraft for today that will be here include 4 S2 and 1 what they call the VLAT, the very large air tanker. That's the DC-10. I just want to indicate that if anybody needs to access a shelter location, the Goleta Valley Community Center at 5679 Hollister Road has been established as a shelter, and there is also availability for animal sheltering, equine and livestock, as well as small animals. There's a hotline, 805-681-4332, that can be called to get animal sheltering coordinated, but the shelters for small animals are at the Goleta Animal Shelter, 5473 Overpass Road, and the equine and large animals are being accommodated at the Earl Warren Showgrounds at 3400 Calle Real in Santa Barbara. So,
Supervisor Hartman.
Thank you. For evacuation, it's often difficult for people who are older, either their health issues are reluctant to leave, and people who have disabilities. Do they call 911 and then get help, or how do we identify those people?
yeah, at this point, that would be the way to do it, to just call the dispatch center and indicate if there was assistance that was needed with evacuation. We would coordinate that. As this event progresses, there may be a call-in line established at the EOC that Kelly can probably talk to you about as well. But and then also, if anyone has, we still have an evacuated area, but there are emergencies that come up where people need to access and obtain medication or something of value that they need to get immediately for a work-related project or something. And if they call us on our business line, we can certainly try to accommodate that and get an escort to get them in.
Very good.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, Supervisor Adam.
I am here. I'm just wondering, Sheriff, what the plan is for the rain event that's going to follow. Are you familiar with what we're looking at?
Yes, Supervisor Adams. The indications are that we're supposed to start a rain event this evening about midnight. The expectation is we could have as much as 1 inch of rain through the evening. Obviously, there will be some areas that will have been impacted by the fire. There could be some potential for flooding. It's not as much of a concern as we've had in the past in Montecito because of the topography and what have you, but there is a lot of concern about the difficulties that it will provide to firefighters, especially that are out there trying to address this fire.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just thinking if you've got it evacuated already, it might be prudent to just leave that evacuation on, because what I'm seeing on one of my favorite weather sites is Weather Underground is 136 before Thursday at 5 and another 266 between Friday and Tuesday for a total of just over 4. So that's going to be a pretty major amount of rain on that instantly burned surface and could cause some problems.
And Supervisor Adam, I think our director of the emergency, OEM, Office of Emergency Management, Kelly Hubbard, will address that as well. So Kelly?
Just quickly, for the board's knowledge, we do have a team at the Emergency Operations Center with Public Works from city and county and our flood control, all starting to look at assessments and such for what are those waterways in those areas. So in addition to what they're doing in the field for responder safety, they're starting to look at and do assessments. It's early for something like a burn report, a bear report, but they're starting to do assessments, just for you. Your knowledge. And then back to the previous question on vulnerable populations, Public Health Department has been in the Emergency Operations Center, and they have been identifying any critical care facilities and working with them to ensure evacuation of critical care type facilities.
Supervisor Hart?
Kelly, will the work toward evaluating the burn scar area when the rain event, will that ultimately culminate in some sort of maps that folks can?
That will be a formal bear report would be something that would occur later, that would be coordinated with fire and the Forest Service, but this is just our Public Works and flood control checking out and looking at what are the channels in the area and what are our natural riverways or waterways, just to see what they can see and what might be of concern in terms of just waterways.
Well, and there's a certain amount of mapping of just potential flood from the creeks that people should be aware of generally, but maybe it's a good idea to think about refreshing that.
So in
making that
general,
current.
as we have the rainstorms come in, the general public messaging and public safety is your standard flood messaging. So, be aware, turn around, don't drown. So if you see standing water, don't assume that you can get through that water. Just monitor and stay aware. Register at Ready SBC if you haven't, so that you can receive alerts or notifications, watch the news and those types of things. So if National Weather Service does issue anything, which is not expected this time, but if they issue any type of flash flood warning or something of that nature, then you can keep that awareness.
Thank you.
Supervisor Williams?
Are we planning any sandbag distribution or other measures?
I don't think that we're aware of, but we can follow up on that.
Great, thank you. That'd be great.
Chair Levy, can I just add one
Yes,
thing as
sure.
a follow-up to Supervisor Adams' comment? Today we'll obviously be in close coordination with the fire authorities to determine when, but I think it's likely that anybody that's been affected by the evacuation area can anticipate that we're not going to be repopulating that area today, just as a result of the weather situation, which we'll obviously be monitoring, and if that changes, we'll change as well. But I think it's a good bet for people to figure that they're going to need to be evacuated through tomorrow, at least.
Okay. Chief?
Real quick update on sandbags. Station 11 on Stork, and then we have the pumps, the county yard there as well, available for public sandbagging.
Okay, very good.
Just very quickly, from the Emergency Operations Center component, wanted to provide a couple quick updates. City of Goleta EOC and the City of Santa Barbara Emergency Operations Centers were both activated yesterday, the City of Goleta being within our own EOC, integrated with us. And they will continue to monitor and determine whether they need to stay activated moving into this evening. And so we have the shelter population last night was around 26 individuals. The last I checked, unfortunately, our briefing is this morning, so I'm not getting that update. Our call center for residents who may have questions, I wanted to provide that. That's 833-688-5551. And then I just wanted to lastly give an update as well on Ready SBC, I mentioned earlier, .org to register for notifications. We also have our maps up, so there's an interactive evacuation map that includes mandatory evacuation orders and warnings, as well as the fire perimeter. And then PSPS, we were at, just to remember where we were at the start of this week, which was only yesterday, but we were in a PSPS potential event, and Edison has notified us that those PSPS concepts were being canceled, and so we are no longer under PSPS consideration. We do have power outages. Those are related to the fire, and we encourage residents to go to the SCE website for any updates on those.
Okay, very good. CEO Miyasato?
And just for the public's knowledge and your board, there is a press conference at 11 o'clock that Unified Command is hosting at Earl Warren Showgrounds.
Okay, very good. I guess I need to ask if there's any public comment on this issue?
Chair Lavanino and members of the board, we have received no request to speak on this item.
Okay, very good. Okay, at this point, I will take a motion to whether or not to adopt the resolution proclaiming the emergency.
So moved.
Second?
And this is staff recommendations A, B, and C. Yes, okay. We'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Chair Lavanino?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay, with that, I will adjourn the emergency meeting of November 26th. And now we will begin the special meeting of November 26th. Do I need to do another roll call and everything, or are we all good? I didn't think we would do the pledge again, but we're good? Okay. All right, so special meeting.
Back in the old days, that might get you recalled, but
They got better reasons now. Admin agenda. I don't have an agenda in front of me, so. Okay. Okay, so is there a motion to move the two admin agenda items?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mr. Adam?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
aye.
Chair Lavanino?
Aye. Okay.
And Chair Lavanino, members of the board, just for the record, we had no request to speak on our administrative agenda today.
Okay. Mr. Gazzoni?
Chair and Supervisors, today the board is agendized to consider 3 items in closed session. The first is existing litigation, the Southern California fire cases. The second is one matter of significant exposure to civil litigation. And the third is conference with real property negotiators concerning properties at 303 South C Street in Lompoc. And given the scheduled emergency press conference, we'll try to get you out of here in about an hour.
Okay. Very good. We will move to closed session.